Hi, we're in the workshop again today, and I wasn't actually going to do a video on this, and what it is, it's our RTV900 utility vehicle. But because I had a number of comments when I did the Cater washing machine, was saying could you do some more mechanical repairs, I thought, well, I might as well do a bit recording on this. So I'll show you what I've done so far and what the problem is. So this is what you call a hydraulic drive or hydrostatic drive, and there's no clutch. What happens is the engine at the front here, which is a 3-cylinder diesel, drives a shaft that drives a pump that's normally in there. I've actually got the pump out in a different box there. I'll show you that later on how that works. And what the pump does, it pumps hydraulic fluid, which then goes through a valve block and then into this thing here, which is a hydraulic motor. And that's what makes the wheels go around. Well, actually that goes to the gearbox first, and then that's what makes the wheels go around via the differential. There's also an auxiliary motor, which is similar to that one that you can see there. And let's say I'll show you how they work later on. That goes on the back of this shaft. So there's actually two motors on this side. So if you need a bit more boost, the other motor kicks in, and that gives you a bit extra power for going up hills. And what the problem was with this was, as you are trying to go up a hill, you could literally walk faster than it. You know, you had your foot to the floor, and it was pretty much like on a car if the clutch is slipping. And what was happening was we were losing hydraulic pressure, and what the normal cause of that is, there's 3 brass plates that these pumps run against, and when those wear, they get a lip on them and the hydraulic fluid escapes instead of being pushed through the pumps to actually make them work. Now, the problem with this, there's also a main pressure pump that's deep within the transmission, and I wasn't getting any pressure from there. So to get to that, I'll show you what I had to do. So I had to remove the back axle from the machine, as we can see there on the floor. Then I had to remove this, which is the rear brake, and this hydraulic fluid goes around here. And what you've got a series of metal plates, and then like a clutch disc, then a metal plate, then like a clutch disc, then a metal plate, then a clutch disc. And when you pull this lever, it squashes the whole pack together, and that's how the brake works. So these are what you call wet brakes. So I had to remove that as well. But also what I discovered when I removed that was one of the drive shafts was damaged, and I'll just show you that here. So what we've got this oil seal here that goes on this shaft like that, and it was leaking from here. But if we notice here, I don't know if you can hear that, it's all rough and all damaged and scored around that area there. I mean, if we compare it to the new one that I bought, you can see that's all nice and shiny all the way through. So I've had to replace or buy a new drive shaft to replace that as well, and that goes on with the bearing and a little circlip here which goes onto here. And I've already put the new oil seal in, so that's another job that I've got to do later on as well. Behind the brake, what you've got here is the differential, which allows one wheel to spin faster than the other when you're going round corners and things. And up here, which you can't really see from the angle that I'm at, is the main, what's called the charge pump. And I'll just show you that. So this is the part that I'm replacing here, and what it's called is the charge pump. And what it does, in the bottom of the sump, it's filled with hydraulic oil. The engine spins this centre cog, which then causes this one to go around like that. It's a bit hard to show. And what that does, it pumps oil from this side to that side, or that side or this side, whichever way it works. And then that sends the hydraulic oil to the main motors, which make the vehicle work. I mean, this actually doesn't look that bad, but I wasn't getting any pressure out of it. So I'm not sure if it's because this outer case has like a bit of a wear line on it. If you look there, you can see. I'm not sure where the hydraulic fluid was escaping from there. There's also one other thing that it could be as well. There's a charge relief valve, it's called. So if the pressure gets too great, and all it is a little spring and a little, what's called a poppet. It's just like a little top hat shape. And if the pressure gets above a certain amount, the spring compresses and allows the hydraulic fluid to return back to the sump if the pressure's too great. And what sits on the back here, there's a hydraulic ram just here, and this is a little tipper truck, so it's normally got like a pickup truck bed on it, but all that had rotted away. So what I've done as well, I've made a new bed for it. So this is the new bed here that I've welded onto the existing frame, and we're going to replace the sides as well, because all the sides were rotted and the tailgate. I'm going to use half the original sides, the top half of them, but it was only the bottom half that was rotted away. So they're at a friend's who's welding some new pieces on for us for those. Like saying, I've welded this bit onto the bottom frame there. I still need to paint the other side of it yet. I've only just painted the top of it so far, so that's another job. And then the brakes didn't work either, so I've just replaced this here, which is the master cylinder. So what happens is when you press the brake, there's a piston in here that squashes hydraulic fluid, which then goes down the pipes. And similar to the rear brake, how it's got that clutch pack that gets squashed together, that's what's in the two front brakes as well. So I had to replace this master cylinder and one of the front packs in the left-hand brake, because the clutch packs and that were missing, so somebody must have taken them out previously, and because they'd, I don't know, worn away or whatever, and also the master cylinder had failed, so that was another job I've had to do. So anyway, let's fit this new charge pump and start putting it back together. So this is the new charge pump assembly that I've got. You can see there's no signs of wear on that one, and if I compare it to that one there, you can see the round mark on it. So I think that's what the problem's been. Right, I'll show you where that goes, and it's a bit difficult, so I'll try my best. Right, so I'm lying on the floor on my back, and there's the differential that we could see from the side, and where this charge pump goes is just up here. So this way is up, just so you're orientated, and that's where it goes, just up in there. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to record this, because I'm having to hold the camera at a bit of a funny angle, and I've got a light shining just so you can actually see in here. So I'm not sure if I'll actually be able to record fitting this, but what my plan is to just put a little bit fresh hydraulic oil on the charge pump first, and then just bolt it on with the new bolts there. So that's the new charge pump in place, and you can see the two little dots there. So you've got to have them facing out over to this side. So now I've just got to put the new casing on and put the two bolts in. Right, so that's the main pump cover back on, and it's a little bit tricky to get in because you haven't got much space. There's a big bearing here on the differential, and you've only got a little bit of space to get in, so I had to use a small socket here and a ratchet. And I've tightened both of those up now. So the next job I've got to do is to get the shaft, the main shaft that goes all the way through this pump to the engine and goes to the main pump as well. I've got to put that back in, so that's what I'm going to do now. So this is the main pump shaft, and it's got to go in here, but there's also a little bit of a... Actually, I think that is the pump there, so I might have to give that a bit of a jiggle to try and get it in place or something, because that shaft's not going to go through there the way it is. Right, I've just slackened the pump back off a little bit so I could adjust it slightly just to get it in line, so hopefully the shaft should just go in now. This thing here, this is what's called a swash plate, and that rotates left and right. It's on like a half moon shape, and what that does, that makes the pistons of the pump, there's a bearing goes in here, it makes the pistons of the pump either push in more or less, and that's how this main pump works, but I'll explain all that a little bit later in the video. Let's see if we can get this shaft in now then. Right, so that's that in. I'm going to put the back brake assembly in now, and what I've done is I've put some gasket sealant around the edge here, because there isn't actually a gasket that goes on there, it's just gasket sealant. And there's a groove just in this part here. You might be able to see there. There's like a groove all the way around here, so when these two faces mate together, it forms a gasket all the way around. Now the other thing I need to do is on the inside here there's this shim, and to stop that falling out, I've got this stuff here called assembly goo. And it's a bit like a grease, so what you do is, it's like a sort of thick grease, you apply it to here, and what it does, it sort of sticks this so it doesn't come out when you assemble it. Right, let's try and get this part in then. Now I remember there was this, I think it's for the four-wheel drive, was in the way of getting it out. So I had to lever that over slightly, like so, just to get it past. I'm not sure how well this is going to go in, because I think the differential might be in the way. I might have to get the old drive shaft and see if I can put that in and then manoeuvre it slightly to try and get this to line up. I wonder if you've got to put the drive shaft in first. I don't think I want to get the angle for this. Yeah, I might have to put the drive shaft in first on this, because there's springs in the way, because when I took it out the drive shaft was actually attached with it. I might have to rethink this one then. Yeah, I've got the drive shaft on now, with the bearing and new oil seal. That's a bit more heavier now. This outside bit's just stuck on this little bracket here, so I can't turn it. About a quarter of a turn that I need to just to get it on. Let's see if I can get a couple of bolts in just to hold it for now. I might have to give it a little bit of a gentle persuasion. I do remember it was quite hard to get this off, and I had screwdrivers round inside of it to try and get it off, and it did come off eventually, but it was quite on there. I should be to get all these bolts in now, and all these bolts seem to be like non-standard sizes, what we're used to over here anyway in the UK. It's like, you know, 13 mils usually a common size, and all these either seem to be 12s or 14mm or 15. These ones here are actually 12mm. The ones that I'm putting in now. And to get this off, I had to remove this oil cooler here, because you couldn't get it past this lip here. So that's why that's off as well. Let's use a spanner on that one. Can't quite get into that one. Can't remember where I've got that one out now. Right, I'm going to couple up the back brake now. And put a new split pin through there. And this is the handbrake cable. Right, the last thing to go on is this spring. So I might have to get a pair of pliers or something just to stretch that. Some cutters here, I'll try those. Right, that's that bit job done. Next I'm going to reattach the oil cooler, which is just here. So this is more actually an oil warmer than an oil cooler, because what happens is the water from the radiator comes through here and it warms up the hydraulic oil, and there's this little spacer that goes in just before it. So I'll try and get this lined up. Now I've just got the oil filter to go back on here. So I've just put new filters on this as well, so So I did say I'd explain a bit how this works. So over here we've got the throttle cable which goes to the accelerator, but what it also does is pull this rod here, which moves this lever forward, and what that does, it allows some oil from the pump that we've just replaced to a piston that's just in this part here, and when fluid goes to the piston, it moves the piston along this way, which then changes the angle of this plate that's just in here, because that's on a sort of C half moon shape, and that sort of rocks more towards the right side there, like that. Now what goes in there is this set of ball bearings with this flat piece on. That goes in just like that, like so, and then we've got this here, which is actually the main hydraulic pump. So I'll just put the camera on the tripod and I'll show you exactly what happens. So as the engine's going round, this pump rotates, and all of these are initially flat, like that, just rotating, so not actually doing anything. When the angle of this plate changes, it'll push some of them in at this side, so as it rotates, these get squashed in and the force fluid through these holes here at a higher pressure than what it's going in. This then goes through another plate that goes on the front of here, which I've yet to attach, goes through some channels in that plate and then into this part here, which has the opposite effect of pushing these pistons forward. Now the pistons on this are on a plate that's fixed at about 45 degrees, so when we push fluid through there, it causes this to rotate, and that's pretty much how the drive works. So I'm going to put this part back on. I'll just go on like that. So attached onto the plate that goes on here are these. And what they are, these are sort of wear plates. These go up against the motor, and when it spins, these eventually wear down. And you'll get a lip, it's like there. I think this one's the worst one. As it was this one, there we go. So I've actually got like quite a large lip there where it's been running up against. So that would be leaking fluid out, so it wouldn't be building up enough pressure either. So I've replaced all three of these brass plates, because there's one goes on the pump, there's one goes on the motor, and there's one goes on the auxiliary motor, which I've yet to put on. Now this is the valve block, and that's where the pump goes up against, and this is where the motor goes up against. So let's install that now. Right, I'm going to put a couple of screws in for now just to hold it in place. Right, so we've got a couple of other things to go on here now. We've got this plate here which needs to go on. That's where that goes, because it's got two little grooves there and there. We also have this piston to go on, and what that does, this is what controls the motor that goes on here next. So I'll just go and grab that. So this is the auxiliary motor. It just goes on this shaft like that. I'm just going to give it a quick wipe off because it's got a bit of dirt on it. So this is the auxiliary motor housing, and that piston that I've just inserted, what that does, this is the swash plate I was talking about. That pushes against this point here, and when the bearing's in, it moves backwards and forwards like that and adjusts the angle, so it either puts more pressure to those pistons, or when it's in that position, there's no pressure to them at all and they just go around freely. So that's how that part works. Obviously you've got the bearing in here first that goes round, which is this thing here. That goes in like that, and that's what that motor spins on. One of the other things that I'm replacing is the charge pressure relief valve, which is this thing here. And it's just literally this little valve thing and a spring, and where that goes, this just goes in this hole just here, like that. And the spring goes into the casing for the back of the motor here. So I think we'll fit that next. Right, I've got everything in place for some of that assembly goo. So hopefully this stays in place while I try and fit it. Right, just want to put a screw in there a second. I'll stick one in here, just to hold this in place for now. Right, because there's 3 long screws, I've got to go into these holes, and the rest are shorter screws. And these ones you've got to put thread tape on as well. I'll put the shorter screws in first, or bolts rather. Well, on the fitting instructions that came with the plates, it said only this hole here needed the thread tape, so I'll just do that then. I'll torque these up once I've got them roughly tightened. And the 2 bolts, or the 2 holes that are here and here, they're for the oil filter, but I haven't got that bit on yet, and that connects to those 2 pipes down there. And there's also another piston assembly that goes into this hole here. Right, that's all of the bolts tightened up, apart from I've still got to put the oil filter on. Right, so this is the piston assembly that needs to go in. That just goes in like that. Now I didn't have a big Allen key to fit that, so what I did was I made this, which is just pretty much a bolt welded to a bit of flat metal bar here. I'll just put that in there. Now use that to tighten it up. There we go. Right, I'll put this oil filter on the next. So I also decided to replace these 2 pipes that go on here, so I've got 2 new ones. So let's fit those. So I've got a long pipe and a short one. So I would have thought the short one's going to go to the top here. No, it has got a bit of a bend in, so I guess it goes more like that way. Check that tub of oil out of the way. So I've got my screwdriver in it. That's one on. Now, is that the right way? Does it go the other way? This one's longer than the other. So I think something like that anyway. Right, I'll go and get the oil filter. And there's 2 slightly longer bolts that go into this to hold this on, which are slightly different to the other bolts. I say they're slightly longer. Just the 2 hose clamps to do up now. Excellent.
3 days later.
Right, back over in the shed today. I'm going to do some more work on the Kubota. And what I'm going to do today is hopefully get this back axle back on. What I've done, I've took the old wheel bearing out from here. There's an outer bearing, then we've got a spacer and then an inner bearing, and the oil seal goes in there. And I've got the new bearings here, which have been in the freezer for a couple of days. So I'm going to try and put those in, get the new drive shaft on, which is just over the back there. So what I'm going to do first is try and get these bearings fitted. I've had them in the freezer, as you can see they're a little bit frozen there. They've got ice forming on them. So hopefully you should go in fairly easily. And there we go, that's that one in. Now I've got an oil seal to go on. That looks a bit weird, that one. I guess it's because that one's dirty. So it must go in like that. Right, that's one side done. Now to do the ones on the opposite side. So I've just stood this upright so it's easier to work on. I need to put this spacer back in. It just sits in the middle here. Then we'll see if we can get the bearing in. Let's give that a tap down. This one's been a bit more of a pain. It is going slowly. That's it, I just wasn't hitting it quite square on. I was sticking it a little bit at one side and then it just fell in. Right, so now just to put the oil seal in. Right, I think that'll do for that. Right, let's see if we can get the new drive shaft in. I've already put some grease on the inside of this. Right, I'll just tighten that up. I'm just going to use this bar to stop it from spinning. Right, I'll just get the split pin and put it through there. Let's see if I can tap that round a bit better than that. I've got the axle in place. I've just got it resting on some bricks and some wooden blocks there. And I've got one of the drive shafts in on the right side there. The thing you've got to remember when you put the drive shafts together, I'll show you on the old drive shaft, is when these two parts go together, if you notice how this part is sort of straight up and this one's horizontal, well that's wrong. What you've got to do, you've got to have both parts facing the same way. Just put this one together so you get the idea. Like that. And the reason is, if you don't have it like that, you'll get excessive vibration because one's trying to turn that way and one's trying to turn that way at the same time. It doesn't work like that. You've got to have it so if let's say you go over a bump, it goes sort of that way, or if it's backwards and forwards, it's sort of like that way, rather than them both being opposing. So you've got to have both of your joints sort of matched up in the same orientation. So I'm just putting the left drive shaft in, and you can see the knuckle there. And if I go up to this side, you can see that it's in line with that one. So I think it's just time to bolt this back together now. Well, one thing that I've just discovered, because I've got the axle in place, but you can't get these U-bolts in because of the rubber gaiter that's round the joint on the drive shaft. So what you've got to do is just lower the axle down a fraction, just smooth it forward slightly, then you can put the front bolt, U-bolt in. It's just a little bit tricky, like that. And then pop the axle back into place, like so. The one at the front here you can get in no problem, so that's not an issue, but the one at the back here, that's what you've got to do to get that in. Just going to give these a quick tighten just before I torque them off. I've put some cable ties around the boots, just on the drive shafts there. The wind's picking up really bad outside now. I've refitted the little hydraulic tank, and what that's for this little hydraulic pump down here, which I've refitted as well. And what that does, this hydraulic ram here, that's for the tipping body, because on the back of this is like a little tipper truck. and when you extend it, this pushes out and tips whatever load you've got in the back, and that's the bit over there that I'm busy working on, and that's controlled by this little valve block down here, which then connects to these pipes which go around to the hydraulic ram here. So I think the only thing I've really got left to do on this part now is to just fit the wheels. So let's get those on. And I'll tighten those up when I've got it on the ground fully. I'll put this little rubber boot on first. Now, I might have a little bit of a problem here, because I think this side's dropped a little bit, so I might have to jack this side up first before I can get the wheel on. Right, let's grab the jack and do that. Right, let's try that again. Right, and I'll tighten those ones up when I've got it back on the floor. I've warmed up the engine and I've had it running for a bit. We don't appear to have any leaks. So what I've done is I've hooked two gauges up to the test ports, which are just down here. You might just be able to see them there. So the top one is the low pressure, or the charge pump, which I've got going to a gauge over there. And this is the high pressure, which is this thin pipe, which goes over to this gauge here. So we'll fire it up and then we'll see what happens on the gauges. So that's the charge pressure gauge, and it's showing about 70 psi idle there. So that's good. We'll just try revving it a bit. Yep, so that seems to be working okay. So this is the high pressure gauge. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put it into here. And I've got the handbrake on. So this should read about 3,800 psi. So we'll just start revving the engine. Let's get up to about 3,500 or so. So I've just had it out for a quick road test. It's dark outside at the moment and raining quite heavily as well. That's why it's all a bit wet. Well, there was only a slight improvement. It's better than it's ever been, but it's still not quite right, so I think I'm going to have to do some more work on it.